Hello. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Fine, pretty good.
You sound pretty good.
Yeah, just rode my new motorcycle. I guess to the next town over. I guess you could say, not really, but technically speaking. So had a nice little trip and it had a rush back. So I'm here.
Yeah, no, I meant your audio on your internet sounds awesome. I don't know what you
Does
changed.
it?
Yeah.
So I don't. Yeah. So we got this mic, but it was a little while ago, a few months ago.
Oh, sometimes when I just listen on Telegram with my phone. And I guess with the phone, it's like harder to tell on your computer. On your computer with
Yeah,
stereo.
if you're obviously if your speakers are
Whoa.
obviously the quality change isn't detectable if the speakers aren't crap. So yeah, it's definitely improved. And this is actually I ordered on Amazon. I didn't just see it walking back from walking by the drugstore. So
Nice.
it's actually a decent USB mic.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot you can get out of a USB mic. You don't have to have studio quality stuff or
Not at all, because technology is always advancing so fast. It's like, yeah, sure, you can probably meet not the top of the line quality, but you can meet, like 10 years ago, top of the line maybe, or I don't know exactly what pace audio tech advances, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, for sure.
You don't have to break the bank.
For sure. I mean, I've had this Yeti, which is USB all the way. I've had this Yeti for since 2018. I've used it like maybe a dozen times. And
yeah, this is same company, I think.
Yeah, once I figured out, this is the blue company.
This is a blue, blue ice.
Yeah.
Mono. Yeah, it's just like a cheaper version, just like
it's
even cheaper because it's new tech. It's like they've just managed to make it cheaper over time.
It's a little small. Well, the first thing I did wrong was I had this. I had to turn the mic around and figured out the configuration was wrong because I would be on podcasts and I would listen to briefly. Just I don't like to listen to myself a lot, but sometimes I might have walked away and missed parts, and so I kind of go back and listen to, like a couple of the round tables and stuff and other people that I've been on. And I realized I'm getting my audio is getting cut out by other people. Like if you're talking and people kind of go, yeah, while you're talking, then their yeah is like crystal clear and your whatever you fucking said is like missing from the podcast. And I realized this because I had it set to where it's like recording the whole room instead of just me. And so it would pick up whatever's on my speakers. And once I realized,
you gotta have headphones.
Well, no, but if you turn the mic around on the Blue Yeti, it's got a bean shape, like a little kidney bean shape, which means it's pointing to you as like it's sort of the microphone is enclosing you. And if you have it, I had it pointed to where it's like 3 circles, and the 3 circles means pick up everything around the mic. And now when I changed it to like you turn the knob to make it look like somebody surrounding you with a hug, then it means the mic is only going to directionally focus on you. And so if you have your mouse and the keyboard and all this other, it'll pick all that up. But if you just have the mic button pointing to just you, then it won't pick up what's on the speaker because it just everything behind the microphone will ignore it from that point on. And it took me 4 years to figure out why I looked. I'm like, I fucking bought a nice professional microphone. Why do I sound like fucking shit?
Well, that's weird.
And so I figured it out. It's like, well, it's just like if you go to a expensive restaurant, you don't thank the stove for what a good job it did. You thank the chef, because you could have the best stove in the world. It's not going to mean jack shit if you know what the fuck you're doing with it. And just like with photography, you could have the top of the line equipment, but if you don't know what you're doing with it, you're not going to take the best photos. And so obviously it was this user error on my part. I was just about to ask where the boomer was. There he is.
What's going on?
I don't think he knows he's in yet fully, but he is.
In there.
Hold on, is he? Oh, I thought he was saying something, and okay, because I might have to.
No,
even though we're on StreamYard.
Doing that. Oh, I'm in here, Grunt, but I don't know I'm in here yet, Grunt.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Even though I'm on StreamYard. Hello. Shit, I do have to do that. Hold on, be right back.
Is there anybody in there?
I was just telling Penguin how great everybody sounds like on the computer. When I listen to you guys, like I'm usually on my phone, and I can't tell the difference for shit, But StreamYard, everybody sounds so great now,
Yeah, you think we sound better?
For sure. I mean, just over since you guys started using this instead of Jitsi or whatever the fuck.
Cool. Yeah, Jitsi was kind of janky.
I mean, it's free, it's open source, it's, anti whatever, but still.
Yeah. Penguin got a new mic too, so that also probably helps him.
For sure.
Yeah. How have you been?
Pretty good actually. For the first time in like 7 months, I've been kind of chill and relaxed and not super anxious and like stressed out. And the last couple weeks have been just even keel for me. So.
Oh, good. Yeah, you've had a lot of shit going on this past year.
Tell me about it. Yeah, I'm perfectly willing to share those sentiments once we start recording, because it's a lot to unload. When you talk about your views, like your evolution into anarchy, and like how you view these things happening to you as a person in the world.
Yeah, for real.
There's a lot there's a lot that you go through and a lot that makes you think about, and so it's not going to be deep, but it's like it's going to be a little deep. I'm not going to make
deep as you want.
I'm not going to make anybody cry or anything like that.
I will cry right on the microphone.
Appreciate you. Are we still waiting on Penguin or?
Penguin, you good?
Oh yeah, I didn't realize I was muted.
That's okay. I know you have a habit of doing it though, so that's cool.
Yeah,
so I got kind of a hard stop at like 6:15, so let's roll. I got Father's Day festivities starting already.
Alrighty, all right. Wow. Look at you.
I already got presents.
Sweet, dude. All right, I'm ready.
All right, and we're back. Welcome back to the Agora Podcast. It's Penguin here with my co-host, Sek Agora. Coming at you with another exciting episode here. Sek, is this part of our ongoing series that hopefully our guests our listeners are listening to?
Yeah, this is another installment in the Women of Anarchism series.
I figure that.
Yeah,
I guess as a woman.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're inviting all our homies on that are our ladies. And today we got BJ Woods, longtime friend of the show.
Did you just assume my gender?
I assumed your gender. I'm terribly sorry. I think I've heard you refer to it yourself as she or as a woman, so we'll go with that. I'm
just teasing.
Women of anarchism. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, that was it. So people who listen to the show have probably heard BJ before, but today we got BJ on to kind of just tell her story a little bit more. BJ, welcome back to the show. How's it going?
Hey, thank you so much. Doing pretty good. How about you guys?
I'm doing all right. A little tired.
Yeah, great. Just went out for a little motorcycle ride. Yeah, I don't think all of our non-Patreon listeners have gotten exactly a ton of BJ content as much as our.
She has been on several panels.
Oh, she has been on the panel. We have done some of the
that were
release on the
public.
panels.
Yeah,
Yes. Well, you're here. You're here just as our sole guest in a feature, I guess, of our episode. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I know you guys
patrons would be much. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I was just saying, I know you guys have been busy this weekend, penguin tooling around town and Zach clearing out the whole, upper part of Tennessee with all of his shenanigans. So yeah.
Yeah, I've been dropping trees today and cutting them up and stacking and burning and stuff. We're about ready to get a wood splitter up there and about ready to start building some coops. Really
nice flex. Proud of you.
Yeah. No, we've been going hard. I didn't even spend I spent like maybe 4 hours up there today. It wasn't bad. I had to like cut up some stuff that I already had knocked down and then clear this one little other spot and just kind of organize it so it can be, processed and stuff and burnt and chipped. But yeah, we're almost ready to build.
Nice.
So I'm stoked. But yeah, that's what I've been doing the last few weekends anyway. I really only think I've got like 3 or 4 days worth of work in there so far.
Yeah, but when you chop it up into baby steps and you look back, you're like, oh, it's only been a week, but look how much I got done,
Yeah, we got a shit ton done. And the girls came up with me today and they kind of tended the fire and then, we cooked some burgers and stuff. And then they ran around in the woods and we're just like guerrilla gardening and planting shit everywhere. And
nice.
Yeah, and they found some berries that were already planted. They found a patch of blueberries and a bunch of blackberries all already up there and some elderberry. So
yeah, I found some old seeds that I forgot I had that are like they're wildflowers, but the stamp on the back of the stuff they're like in a bag with like how you get stuff from Amazon and you take it out of the bag and then you put it somewhere else and then you go and find the bag later and it's like wildflower mix on the label, but you don't know what that means. And so I just was like, oh, these are actually from like Florida. So I did is I went and I threw all these seeds into a ditch that's lining the alleyway over here. And just because nobody ever mows that area, nobody ever weed whacks it. And, it just looks like overgrown lawn, and how you get some of those wild, it's almost like prairie grass. And then you kind of have some like clover and some other crap, but it's like, it's not really doing anything, it's not attracting bees. And it kind of lines the 2 yards that I rent, the property that I rent and the yard over. And both of our properties, the people that rent here, we garden. And so I thought, well, that might help attract some pollinators or something.
Oh yeah, get some bees coming in. Yeah.
So.
Plus it'll look pretty.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, nobody ever weed whacks it, and it just looks like a jungle with cyclone fence behind it. It looks trashy. So I thought flowers at least dress it up a little. So
very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, so I suppose you probably have questions, or if you want me to follow.
Did you see that fat sack of seeds I just bought?
Yes, I did, and all that feed and stuff, corn and whatnot.
Yeah. I think it's like 20, 30 pounds of seeds.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna go. It's gonna be a crazy year.
Yeah, well, as much as you guys go out and like just scatter seeds around and stuff, you're gonna, you gotta have stuff to throw around, so it works.
Yeah, we'll grow some of it here and then some of it up at the other property that we're clearing. We're gonna put in some gardens and food forests up there, and then plus we just scatter them all over the place anyway. So
cool. Yeah, I've been lurking most things online lately, mostly Telegram. I've been ignoring, but so I've been able to follow, the guerrilla folks and what you guys are up to, and it's all good. Yeah,
our property up on top of the mountain there is like backed by a bunch of acres of state land. So we're definitely going to do some food forest shenanigans in the state land also.
Why not? I mean, until somebody does something with it.
Yep. Until somebody finds it. I mean, there's trails and people ride 4-wheelers through there, through the trails all through there anyway. So we can just plant them all over the place. It's way out in the middle of nowhere where no one's going to go except unless you know where that is. So,
yeah. I mean, like until somebody buys that land and does something with it, nobody's going to care. And even if they do, like if there's any like naturalists or like habitat type people that like go exploring those places, if they're part of the government, they'll be like, oh, this is all wild, so we'll preserve this. Like they probably don't even know any better, you know?
Yeah, it already is it's TWRA land, which is Tennessee Wildlife something.
Oh yeah.
So it's already wildlife
Nice
preserve kind of a deal. So
you're just helping them out for free then, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. I'll feed the critters.
Good for you. Well, I myself have not really. I almost kind of opted out of gardening this year just because of all circumstances, and then summer just literally happening when it's not even summer on the calendar yet. So, yeah, so that's where I'm at. I got some beans on the back porch, but that's about it. And that's fine with me because I have a lot of friends locally that are doing gardening and I'm helping them with their stuff. And I'll probably also support the local markets. Once people start harvesting stuff, I'll just like, hey, I'll buy tomatoes from you or zucchini or whatever. But I'm not really one of those people that like lives on vegetables anyway. So for me, it was just like, okay, how much of this can I just learn to do in the case of like a survival thing? Because that's really what vegetables are, is survival food, and you can use it to enhance some stuff. But basically, you guys know I'm kind of carnivore. And so for me, vegetables are truly not necessary for my health, but I do like them quite a bit.
They are very tasty. Yeah.
Some vegetables really physically bother me, but it's kind of like one of those things where you have like people that are addicted to certain substances and they're just like, they can't help it. And then they get sick or they get hungover or whatever. And it's like, yeah, this isn't helping you. So
vegetables are a good garnish. I don't think you need a lot of them. But
yeah, I mean, herbs and certain kinds of things, like I'll have.
I mean, you make an omelet and you chop up a little bit of vegetables in it. You don't, the egg is the main ingredient.
100%, 100%.
Do you really want an omelet of just egg?
Yeah, exactly.
And that goes for anything else,
Unless I have some like really good quality butter, a little salt and pepper, and just, egg and butter makes a good omelet too. But yeah, for sure. Like I'm just one of those people that like, I grew up eating vegetables. We cleaned our plates, and as kids, we were told how to appreciate, wax beans and green beans and rhubarb and radishes and peas and all these things like fresh from the earth. And some of that stuff we were like, ew, gross, but some of it we were like, this is good. Because our parents got us involved in, the making of the food and the pulling it out of the ground and all that stuff that I think most people would be envious of. And so I was raised to enjoy vegetables. In fact, I was kind of almost vegetarian for most of my adult life, and it fucking just about killed me. But then you include all these things that they tell you in late 70s, early 80s, mid 90s, everything is low fat and fat free because you're going to have a heart attack if you eat eggs and red meat. And, all this indoctrination, which, now when you have 2020 hindsight and you look through all the evidence and all the anecdotal data, people basically slowly dying of like, diabetes and heart disease. It ain't from eating meat and eggs. That's for sure. Because we survived. Well, we evolved by eating meat. I mean, we'd still be flinging our shit at each other and screaming from trees if we hadn't, discovered some kind of protein from an animal.
Yeah, nutrition.
And possibly psilocybin mushrooms, just for the record.
Yeah, I was just I knew somebody was gonna pipe in. I know you guys are. I know SEC is big on, the fungi, and that's cool too.
Yeah, nutrition is not like something I like to overthink. I think it's actually very simple, but the whole thing about all the different time scales where they're like, this is bad for you, this is good, no, this is bad for you, this is good. Obviously, you get the articles that just come up. You get them that show up perennially saying first butter's bad, then butter's good, then you have to have this kind, then you have that, then margarine was good, then margarine was actually the worst thing ever, blah blah blah. Then you get the large time scale, the big stuff like fat is bad and carbs, and then they switch that and everything. And actually, it's actually a little more complicated. But basically, I think if trying to whittle down a consensus, meat and fat are generally good, and it's pretty easy to reason that. In that, excuse me, and that like I'm not trying to do the I do appreciate anarchist anthropology or whatever, but I'm not trying to do like against the grain anti-civ kind of here. It's just very simple,
Sure.
like a carb heavy diet, like a diet based on carbs. I know whole grains and like unprocessed grains are actually pretty healthy for you, but like a straight up carb heavy diet for a variety of reasons that including economic and everything, but actually just from the nutrition side of it, like that's not a natural, that's you're eating grass. It's been like artificially selected for to grow en masse and for various reasons and various like you know millennia of human history that kind of led to that becoming a thing.
Oh yeah, and it's been
but that doesn't we're not meant to do that. We're not meant to eat like subside off of like bread and grass.
Ultra processed and refined carbohydrates are exactly. That is a mutation of, I mean, even 100 years ago, the stuff that we were eating is a mutation of what our ancestors would have enjoyed. They would have grown it and milled it themselves, and they would have. And listen, every time you guys talk to me, you're gonna wind up focusing a lot on food, and the reason why is for my story, I guess, for this particular interview, it would be that food and nutrition and health were my path to liberty. And
we just jumped right into it.
Yeah, for sure, and that's good. Great.
Why don't you actually go and tell your story for those that don't know? And like I said, a lot of our listeners probably haven't heard you talk about stuff yourself. I definitely have, but I can almost guarantee you might have mentioned it on the panels, briefly when we all did intros. But why don't you go share like your story, your path to liberty, kind of your background and what you do?
Yeah, so I mean, I was born in the 70s to parents who, were in suburbia and trying to do the best for their family. Your typical normie family. My mother was very civically involved. She was always doing Girl Scout troop stuff and volunteering to help with whatever was going on in town, whether it was a church thing or somebody needing help with a campaign of some kind, chairing a committee, just literally just active in the community. And so that was a model for me to that's the kind of stuff I grew up doing. Even when I was a little kid, I was volunteering and just all this, there was no days where we complained about being bored. And this is not the generation of, being babysat by an iPad or sometimes even the TV. I mean, the TV was something that would be a privilege for us to watch the Muppet movie or the Muppet Show or whatever. Like, mom and dad getting ready to go out dancing on a Saturday night and the babysitter's on their way, those were treats for us. But that's just an example of how it still was easy for us to become indoctrinated by media and school and all these other things just because, parents in the 80s, they try hard, but let's face it, the boomer generation was always working or always busy. And, we weren't left alone a lot as kids, but I would say that by the time we were 11 and 12, we were already babysitting outside of the home for other people's kids. The parents would come pick us up, give us instructions. They were out the door. There you go, bowling. They had to go to a dance, concert, something. And, me and my sister earning, $3-4 an hour. This is in the 80s. $3-4 an hour was pretty primo cash for spending to watch a couple kids after dinner, read them a story, put them to bed, and literally just watch Doogie Howser on the couch. And what was that other show Stephen Bochco had in the 80s? I think it was like a rock show for cops, and it was like cops singing or whatever. So
yeah, I've never heard of that. That's some good money to take to the mall or go to the arcade.
Wake up at like midnight and the parents come in and they wake you up. And it's like, now it's like you hear stories about people like, oh my God, somebody on Twitter said the babysitter fell asleep. Oh my God. And everybody's wagging their finger and getting pitchforks. That's like, what the fuck? That was normal back when I was, a young lady trying to learn how to function as an adult. And again, my mom was one of those boomers that we didn't have to be latchkey kids because she was staying home. So she stayed at home. She worked on the home.
Oh, yeah.
You know, she was a homemaker, and she also did daycare in the house for 20 some years. And so we got to see, especially in the summers when we were home, because there's no school, you know, we got to see what it's like to care for young children and, you know, learn from her exactly how to change diapers and feed little babies and, you know, do all kinds of things with young kids and learn to play games with them. And then that led to my Girl Scout experience, because I was a brownie, and then I was a junior, and then I was a cadet, and then even as a senior in high school, I completed my Girl Scout career, 12th grade, age 17. I got my gold award, which is like the Eagle Scout Award, but it's, you know, the Girl Scout equivalent. And, you know, earning badges and doing all this like civic stuff and like volunteering at every spring here in St. Paul, we have the Festival of Nations, which was like a cultural event before culture was shoved down everybody's throats. So some people would all appreciate. They would go to, they would get, you know, henna done. They would learn, watch people weaving blankets and watch dances and eat foods from all around the world and buy crafts from artisans and just really cool stuff. And none of it was like, you know, awful. Like nowadays it seems like, you know, if you don't appreciate culture, there's something wrong with you. And it's like back then, everybody loved this stuff, you know, and there was nothing wrong with it. And there weren't people like outraged by it. And so I guess my early learning from my mother and from Girl Scouts and from other influencing things like that, junior achievement was another thing that I was active with. And you would go to these things with like your class or some friends or whatever, and they would talk about, you know, what's it like to start a business, or what's it like to come up with an idea of your own that you're really passionate about, and like how to get other people involved and how to like explain and sell your idea. And that was valuable on many levels. I mean, you don't even have to be interested in business to take on something like that and absorb it like a sponge and learn how to be an effective communicator of your goals and dreams and philosophies. And so yeah, I mean, it was, for me, it was like something that like I thought every kid should have, you know. And we did okay. I mean, financially, my family was never poor, but like we weren't spoiled. We weren't just given everything. We had to do chores, you know, if we wanted to earn any kind of reward. And any mom in the 80s would be really stupid if they didn't like teach their kids how to do stuff around the house, because, you know, when you're busy, it's helpful. And not only that, but like you're getting child labor for sure. But like also they're going to be, when they get older, they're going to be blessed with that understanding and that skill, and be able to, when they go out on their own, they know how to cook, they know how to do their laundry, they know how to make their own bed, they know how to budget for, you know, their household, and just all these things. Like I knew how to change a tire before I even got a car, and I still don't have a car, but that's a whole other can of worms. But these things that I feel like should just come with being part of a family, no matter what era you grew up in, and no matter your class or your background. And so I was very early on, very heavily, I guess, passionate about community things and about people and like people that were involved in stuff. And so from an early age, I saw my mom, you know, helping with political campaigns, whether it was somebody running for a district representative or mayor or school board director, things like that. And that was something that she was really good at. And so, like I said, that was kind of a model for me. And even when I was a young person in my early 20s, mid 20s, I was on boards of directors for civic organizations and all these things that I just thought, well, I know how to do something, or I have something to offer. So yes, I will volunteer to do this. That's not executive stuff. It was just like, I guess the perks were just meeting other professionals, whether it was in the same industry as yours or not. But I would say that a lot of community stuff heavily influenced me. And of course, the school districts and the school system in the late 70s, early 80s was already being heavily leaning towards a lot of like statist ideals. And like, I mean, even in the late 60s, you probably see a lot of that where it's like, sociology class and politics class. And like 10th and 11th grade, you had to take, a semester of like politics. I think it was called political science. And, world news class and just all this other stuff. And, like I said, hindsight's 2020. You look back and you're like, all this stuff that they taught us, it's like, Christ, it's like all the stuff I've been trying to unlearn for the past, 7 years.
Yeah, sounds like you really had all-American middle class upbringing, which is cool. I think that, as much as maybe that's not, I mean, I think that for a long time there was a lot of nostalgia as your generation kind of aged to the point where they, I don't know, start feeling very nostalgic. Maybe when their kids start reaching out on, I don't know, because I don't know what the theory of nostalgia is, but I think people, in many cases, I think really rightfully, we are at a place where we celebrate all sorts of different lifestyle choices and ways of being. But I think that kind of middle class lifestyle, that all-American lifestyle from especially the 70s, 80s, where a lot of people were, there were some hard economic times in there, but there was also some real prosperity and people do actually look back fondly to those times, and it wasn't like a cynical thing, like more like the 90s, where there was a lot of cynicism and irony
For sure.
started to creep in. I think the 80s would have been more earnest, like cool but earnest, and there's still a lot of nostalgia and a lot of nostalgia for the style and artistic influences and entertainment, and just the overall like pop culture, so you just speak broadly defined, from the 80s, but not just to talk about 80s like pop culture and consumerism, but I think just the middle class lifestyle, by all means make your own choices, live how you want, but I think that's a good model for making healthy people that make healthy choices.
Well, and I think overall, I lucked out because a lot of people in my generation, Gen X, are latchkey kids. They're raising some of the worst people right now, and Gen X are some of the worst people because they were raised by some of the worst people. But like I said, I think I lucked out because even though my mom was a huge, statist, I'll get to her in a minute, but my dad was an orphan. Like he literally came from nothing, and he had been, shuffled around from foster home to foster home when he was young. And when you're an orphan in the, 50s and 60s, you literally have nothing and you're jack shit to nobody. And, he had, if you ever had a toy as a child, or clothing or any kind of belongings or things that you might have used in your daily life or just enjoyed as a child, as children do, you didn't get to keep that stuff when you got shuffled to the next foster home. Like that was stuff that belonged to the house. And so when he met and married my mom, he was like, they were having like a little dance after their wedding, which was just a courthouse wedding. And then because it was my mom's second marriage, and that was a whole long thing anyway, I'm not getting into that, but she was like, what is the matter with you? And then she's suddenly like, she's trying not to be, hard, but at the same time, she's like, they're dancing at their wedding. And he's like, well, it's just, the first thing that nobody can take away from me. And so I would say my upbringing was very 80s middle class and very sort of like borderline affluent. But you know what? It's because my family made choices. And one of those choices was my dad basically worked in the same industry, different places, for a few years here, a few years there. But basically he was a baker from the time he was about 14. He decided to go and basically beg for work. And he decided, he said he decided that he was grown up now, and that, he had enough of this foster home nonsense and all these little brats and stuff. And he decided to just basically go ask people to like help them work. And so there was this company, very small bakery, a couple towns away from my hometown. And they basically said, okay, well, we'll do an apprenticeship with you, and basically we'll teach you how to work here. And, you don't make a lot on an apprenticeship. Maybe they gave him, some money to like, have some place where he can go and stay or whatever, but I don't know the exact details. I just know that, he worked really hard. And a lot of people say, oh, the boomers, they had it made and they abused all their privileges because, they got to work same place for 30 years and they don't know how good they had it and this and that. But in the case of my dad, I would say that was patently false, because he basically just went out there and said, I'm going to do this, and somebody's going to help me do it, but I have to help myself first. And then the reason I was lucky was because not a lot of people in my generation had a stay-at-home mom. Most of them, were working 1 or 2 jobs. And I would say the consumerism was a big part of that. I would say the 80s were basically pretty affluent for like white middle-class Americans, working class Americans. And, back then working class was kind of middling, I mean, even in like the late 70s, early 80s, even with like union jobs under threat, and even with like automobile companies in the Midwest, laying people off left and right, even then people were doing pretty good with not a lot. And so the 80s were great as far as like, if you wanted to buy something and have it, it wasn't like you had to go broke to get it. And you didn't have to finance anything if you wanted to, because Singapore and the Philippines and China and Taiwan became our biggest imports for just everything you wanted. Barbies, stereos, video game, watches and calculators were huge in the 80s. And if you got caught with a calculator in my school, you'd have detention. But that's just an example of like how I felt like I was lucky because of the fact that my mom decided, she's going to stay home. And
did you have the calculator watch?
You know what? That is the height of nerdism in my day. But there was this kid who had a crush on me in like 7th grade, and he had one. And that was the gauge of like how much of a fucking nerd you were.
Those must have been so cool when, so like, out of this world when they came out, which is so funny because they're sure. Pretty cheap now, but people still wear those and rock them even now. I love Casio. Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, Casio was a great brand back in the day. And I think, didn't they have like a football game too, like a handheld? Or is that Coleco I'm thinking of? It's one of those.
Probably.
I remember that handheld football game though.
Like the first one that came out, it was like, oh my God, you couldn't tear it. I had a couple of foster brothers when we were younger. My parents did do foster parenting for a little while because I don't know, they had some fucking wild hair. They decided they wanted to do that, and because they tried but couldn't have more kids. And my dad said, he'd like a couple of boys, and of course I didn't turn out to be a boy, but I still got named after my dad. My name's Bobby Joe. My dad's name's Robert. And so my real name, I'm not going to tell you, but it's basically the female version of Robert. So figure that out. You can figure that out. And but yeah, it seemed like the 80s were very like me, and like everybody hating Ronald Reagan and like the crack epidemic starting and all this other stuff. But at the same time, you go over to like normie Midwest, folks who are like clueless about half this stuff that's going on. Yeah, like I said, we had it really good. I got no complaints about the way I was raised. But like I said, it had a lot of influence on my early interpretations of like the world and the government and things that we ought to do and things that, everybody ought to do and feel passionate about. And it had given me a warped sense of, I guess, getting to be an adult. And so I had grown up in a household that identified, well, at least my mother did, of very heavily DFL, very heavily, we must do everything we can for these people And of course, when she says we, she means, her and the government.
Democratic Farm and Labor, you're in Minnesota, right? Democratic Farm and Labor, the state.
Huge.
Center left party. Yeah.
Huge. And for a brief stretch there in the, I want to say early 2000s, maybe we were a little starting to lean a little purple, but for the most part, it's a very deep blue state. As far as the metropolitan areas, the major metros.
It's the only state state party with a special name that I know. Like I just pointed it out for our listeners. It's the only one that I know. I've never heard of another like the name of a state party. That's like a very unusual thing. They're very strong up there in Minnesota, right? Minnesota.
Very much so. Very much so. And to the point where my mom's busyness with politics and civic activities was so heavy that she went ahead and started working on the planning commission, which is sort of like saying the zoning commission or a city commission. It is a greater part of city, I guess, administration, or at least advocacy. So you talk to citizens and you would work with them to bring concerns to city council. And so my mom would spend hours on the phones with people because she had such a forward way. She would, give people their number. And I don't know if people do that a lot nowadays, but it was hard to use the phone in the 80s. And I was like, Mom, I'm waiting for that call from that boy. Well, she's busy on the phone. So not happening. But this is before you can get another line, or before we could get another line anyway. So she was one of those people that just literally would say, I'm gonna listen to your problem and we'll do what we can about it, or I'll at least listen to it. And I can try to influence whoever. Like she really had great intentions. And what's sad about it is that you can't argue with her about that stuff. Like, she literally thought that everything that she was doing was going to make the world a better place. And not from like a liberal sort of snob place, but like I saw a lot of suffering when I was growing up and I want to change that, And so that's, I think, coming from a poor lady. She grew up in the country, and they literally had a house with tar paper on it. I mean, that sounds like a derogatory thing to say, but in the country, if your husband is a janitor for the school, which is, let's face it, you're living in the country in that particular time and that particular area that they lived in, that wasn't a bad job to have. But it still wasn't the best. And my grandmother basically was, she was doing washing for people, and she was staying home and literally growing and cooking everything and doing everything. And you come from that and you move to the cities and you marry someone you love and you buy a house together. That's like the dream that you don't have. This is the dream that you have, but you don't think you can fulfill because you're in the country, and like you get a TV like 10 years after TVs have been out. You have an outhouse that you have to go to the bathroom in until you're like 17 years old. And then finally your parents finally build an actual regular house, but they do it with their own two hands, and other family members come and do it. So when you come to the cities and you have all this desire to like be better and to do better, I think that was most of her motivation. And so then she was on the city council for 11 years. And it wasn't like a self-important hoity-toity. I keep seeing it as I want to help, and here's what I have to offer. That kind of thing. Very diplomatic and very kind of, and I'm not just talking her up because she's my mom. We had issues, her and I. So, yeah, I mean, long story short, she just helped a lot of people. Even if she couldn't really help them, I think it helped for them to know that she was listening and that, she was an advocate for them. And, we lost her in January. And the reason it was hard was because she had been, her mental health and her physical health had been dwindling more rapidly in the last couple of years. But before that, she was not healthy for probably 20 years. And that's no kind of quality of life, in my opinion. And so I kind of go back to this whole taking care of yourself and like watching about what you put in your body and how you treat your body and all this other stuff, because, you know, both her and my dad had a lot of problems that when you look back, most of it's due to stressful living conditions and like choices, and not conditions, but like choices. So like not getting great sleep, not getting a lot of quality exercise, you know, not eating the right things, being on ridiculously complicated and just, you know, destructive pharmaceuticals for a good portion of your golden years. And my dad had dementia. Like, he was a goner. I mean, it was like talking to a 4-year-old just in the last couple of years of his life. I mean, types of dementia, like literally they're basically advanced diabetes. And a lot of people don't know that now. They know that now, but back then they just thought, oh, right, just have to make him comfortable and let him do whatever he wants. You know, it's like bullshit. You know, now you can treat that stuff, or at least slow down the aging of the brain. And the gut to brain connection is a real thing. You know, you can actually destroy your digestive system to make it to where you're putting things in your body that don't belong there, and then they get into the bloodstream. And where does the bloodstream lead? Right to your brain. So that barrier, when you open your mouth all the way to the end you put on the toilet, that's a closed system. There's nothing disturbing that until you destroy any of that system with poison. And so if you start having a leaky gut, you're going to have a fucked up brain eventually if you don't heal it.
They call the gut the second brain for a reason.
That's right.
Well, first off, I mean, good for your dad for like literally coming from nothing and making something of himself and providing a good life for you and your mom and that. And regardless of what your mom's politics are, good for her for trying to help. You know what I mean? So, no, I'm definitely sorry for your loss. My mother and I didn't see eye to eye on a lot either. But you know, she's still your mom. So,
yeah.
So
my dad,
good for them.
My dad's whole purpose was to like make us happy. That was it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, I know that. I'm a dad. I know that feels. So, oh, well, that reminds me. You all listening to this will not get this until after Father's Day, but we're recording this the day before Father's Day.
Yeah, happy Saturday.
Yeah, so happy Father's Day to anybody who's a father out there that's listening to this. But, so you're.
So my path to liberty basically is a summation of all those parts.
Yeah.
And being influenced by, you know, indoctrination, and being influenced by certain media, and being influenced by certain horrible medical advice and nutrition advice. Like I say, I think my parents really blessed me and my sister with sharing everything they knew. And like I say, you don't see that a lot. In the time that I lived, you don't see that a lot. Most of my peers were left at home alone to figure out whatever for themselves. But you know, that's the thing about Gen X, is like that's what made us kind of tough in our young adulthood and able to basically do whatever we wanted to if we just tried. And also kind of, I guess, a little hard to destroy, you know, kind of like, oh, you can't tell me what to do. My parents fucked me up a long time ago, you know? But yeah, so I guess my path to liberty was just identifying as like super hardcore liberal, like writing all these essays in school about, so much crap. I mean, I wish I could find some of those and just like, look at them and cringe. Just thinking that the whole world has to be helped
And who's going to help it? Well, we pay all these people in DC to do this and that. And we pay the guy down the street at City Hall to do this and that. And it's like, you really believe this crap. And it's such cringe now. But it's like, I think the reason that I wanted to believe it so much was because of how I saw my mom interpreting, the law and interpreting helping people. So you have a mixed kind of, you know what I mean? You see people that you think that they really have a good intention. And then you see other people getting screwed over by that same system that someone you love is advocating and trying to help people to understand and given this like false promise, if you write your representative, they're going to do this and that and the other thing. In some cases that's true. In some cases you have people in the Senate or the whatever, like their junior year, they have no fucking idea what they're doing. They're trying to help people, but they're not going to succeed. There's no political solution to people's happiness. You got to find it within yourself, and it took me like it's almost 40 years to learn that. And so I spent probably the majority of my mid 20s to early 40s being heavily staunchly against everything I grew up to know and appreciate. And I fucking embarrassingly almost voted for McCain. Almost. And I say almost because I had an absentee ballot. I had a witness. And I had everything lined up to go. And my family friend who was going to volunteer to do this for me, she had to go up north to see her mom who was really sick. And so I missed the deadline to file that. And I kind of, in retrospect, I'm kind of like, glad I didn't do that. I'd feel pretty guilty if I had done that. But it was like, I was going to hold my nose and sign on the dotted line that this was my ballot and blah, blah, blah. Well, what ended up happening was I started. Was
that your rebellious streak?
That was well, part of that was like a few years leading up to that, I started my own business on the side of my regular job. And you start your own business, you kind of, from a liberal growing up, you start your own business and you're like, holy shit, dude, I'm conservative now. You know what I mean? Because you realize what tax bracket you're in now. You realize all the shit they've been lying to you about when it comes to all this regulation, what you can do and what you can't do, and all this stuff that ties into your business. And of course, back then it never occurred to me I could just go rogue or go like gray market and just fucking do what I want under the table. It never occurred to me because I was very, I was a person who was instructed and indoctrinated into legal things, and I didn't want to do anything illegal. No way. I mean, sometimes I still don't want to be like, I'm not going to do that. Mostly it's because I just don't want to get thrown into a cage, and that's something that you either evolve in or you're raised in. And in my case, I evolved to it just because of my lifestyle changes.
Yeah, I mean, that's entirely reasonable not to want to even just deal with the hassle. But I think another thing that it sounds like you were indoctrinated in would be like binary politics. So,
this way and that way.
Yeah, to rebel against the kind of like center left DFL, progressive political agenda, you just went with the Republicans, which I mean, electorally, that is the two options, no doubt. But
I mean, it takes.
It's destructive. I think.
Yeah, you evolve or you rebel, and in my case, I rebelled without realizing that I didn't evolve. I rebelled, and so I feel like now, as someone who's more like an agorist, voluntarist, whatever label you want to give it, anarchist, those all fall under the umbrella of liberty. And so with a little L, of course, because I was never interested in party politics of libertarianism. But yes, I think you put it so well that it wasn't an evolve. It was a reaction. It was more of a, oh, this is all the crap that I had to do. And I think most of it was like blind, because you sometimes feel like, I felt like I was a little ripped off. I felt I was misled. I felt I was lied to. And then I was angry. And I wasn't angry like, oh, I'm going to go do something bad to myself, but like thought that I was doing the right thing. It was like a righteousness anger. Like, yeah, this is better because, and also it's like kind of embarrassing to admit to yourself that you were misled and you were stupid and foolhardy And then when you come to, a dozen years later and you're like, fuck both of these parties, fuck both sides of this nonsense, fuck this duopoly, fuck this like meaningless charade of like this side and that side and you're wrong and you're wrong. It's all wrong. I mean, it took me that long, that pipeline from your DFL to your GOP to your, I don't know what the fuck I was from 2012 until 2017. And 2017 is kind of where I found like liberty and anarcho-liberty Twitter and anarcho-liberty, situations online. And some people locally, I mean, they had this, there's some people here in Minnesota that kind of ride the libertarian / anarcho thing, but also mix in and kind of mingle with, the rightoids over here. And that's fine with all of us. But for the most part, I'm kind of like, that makes me barf too. But like, because I've become such a purist, it's disgusting how I'm just like, well, I'm not going to the farmer's market because they're tied in with the fucking government too. It's like over here, it's a little different. But like some places, if you're rural, they'll have like farmers markets that aren't so like, they're into paperwork and all this other bullshit. And it's like, I know Sac and you guys probably get away with more like a roadside type of thing situation, or like a pull up to this, private property where people have a farm stand or whatever. Like that doesn't happen here.
I don't know where that is. I'm not in a very rural place. I know my mom has told me that if I ever see that sort of thing, because she doesn't necessarily, my mom is not of this political bit of this podcast, okay? But she's always said the same thing. Like she doesn't want to go to like, there's a basically what they call a farmer's market down here, but it's like the bougiest version of a farmer's market. I mean, it's like a pop-up kind of once a week thing in the nice weather season, but it's bougie, more expensive kind of crafts, small businesses. I love it. It's still great. I still like to see it, but it's a little bougie. And you go out to the next other city, which is like the biggest city in Virginia, technically.
Yeah.
You go out to basically the burbs, and it's bougie in its own way. It's very organized. It's very like, it's not necessarily coming straight from the farmer's hands, or maybe it is, but
very
it's
professional.
It's got the air.
Yeah.
It's like a place with all these big little buildings and stalls that was built by the city a long time ago, because I know it's been there for a while, and it's like it just doesn't have the air of what she thinks is like a spontaneous kind of farmer's market. And say what you will, I have no problem. I love the small businesses. I love the small farmers, even if they're I know those guys are paid. Don't get me wrong. I know the economics of these things now, and I know like what you're dealing with. And I'm not just like only the smallest possible imaginable business. The underground businesses are acceptable. But I think there is an idea, that like I'm not buying like vanity goods to look like, I'm not trying to, what am I trying to say? I'm not trying to buy like these kitschy goods from like a gift shop. I'm trying to actually do business directly with farmers. And you can do that. They don't have to be ideologically agorists. What I'm saying is, I want to do business.
I catch myself saying that. I'm telling you, I admit that I'm that much of a purist sometimes, and I catch myself later going, it's okay. I'm still not at the grocery store. It's like you guys have always said in the earlier podcasts that I used to always listen to your guys' episodes was, with the Food Not Bombs guy and like talking about the political like idea of the consumerism that where you shop and like how you control your food supply or where you get your foods from. It is a political decision that you're making. But yeah, at the same time, it's like, okay, I can knock the purist thing down a little bit, a couple pegs, and just like, it's okay, because this guy isn't necessarily putting, Monsanto in his food, or this lady, she has to butcher her own shit. And here she is, like there's an aspect to it that I can appreciate. But at the same time, the reason that I bring this stuff up about purism is I actually know if I get into a car with a friend and we drive 40 miles, we can go get the same shit from somebody who is doing it on the down low. You know what I mean? And so
I think people just want to do the business as close as possible with as few middlemen, whether directly or like indirectly, as in like, I don't know, government regulation.
Well, that's what I meant by
but,
the person 40 miles away is doing it.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to the farmer's market. They refuse. They don't want to be involved.
And not their agorist. It's just but I think there must be some. I mean, I'm just observing. This is kind of anecdotal, I guess, but like some people like just want to have they don't want to have those intermediaries. They want to get it from as close to the source as possible. And then, you know, us as, and when I say us, I mean my fellow Muslims. Us Muslims, you know, we have a certain manner of slaughtering that we require. So we actually we actually connect with people and connect with people with farms, or some people will actually buy a farm. I've seen this, and they'll go and do that. And I've mentioned this on the pod before for various reasons. Like, but like, it's common for all sorts of people for various reasons. And you can still do it. I mean, you know, just don't. I know people that do like raw milk and that kind of stuff, and you just some spontaneous networks pop up, and it's certainly libertarian in the less in the political but less ideological sense, but it's certainly not restricted to people that would claim that label at all. But I mean, it is certainly libertarian as opposed to not.
Well, and that's kind of what led me to like finding freedom cells is, you know, during the, I guess I wouldn't say the height of the hysteria, but like at the beginning of like when it started to uptick, like before Floyd and before all this other stuff, when people were being told to stay home unless they had an essential job and all this other shit. I would say it was like early spring 2020 to like almost summer of 2020 is when I was just looking around at like what's out there on the web that I can find people locally who just don't agree with any of this shit. And of course, there was a few groups that had popped up, and a lot of them were like super conservative, like people arguing at the governor's mansion, waving waving American flags and like stomping all over the Capitol. And I was like, that doesn't seem very attractive to me, you know? And so I kept looking, and I found this group called Mask Off, and it was a local group, and they were staunchly against, you know, all this medical, you know, tyranny and all this other stuff. But that's like all they were. Come to find out that they were very political. They were very, let's have a rally and let's go do this. And I thought, well, that's not too bad. That's their thing. But like, maybe if I just associate with these people, like I can get the lowdown on like, where's the spot I can go to like support, you know, what stores or what businesses or what dentist's office like aren't requiring, you know, this compliance to this nonsense. And like, who can I support that's like, you know, I guess anti-tyranny friendly. You know, I want to give my dollars to those people. I want to go to that restaurant or that, you know what I mean? And so I thought this is where the hang is, right? And it turns out that most of those people didn't really know either. So, but we had a way to report these things. Like somebody would say, oh, so-and-so co-op is, you know, don't go there if you don't want to argue with people about a mask because they will ask you to put one on or leave the store. And so there was all these reportings and there wasn't any good reports. And I was like, this is kind of what I don't want, and wound up accidentally falling into the lap of the Freedom Cells, which is the, you know, the Derek Bros and the John Bush guys. And they have people all over the world. And I think, you know, Sec is pretty familiar with Freedom Cells, but I got really involved with them because there was a little overlap between those people and the Mask Off people. But what these people were doing was they were not rallying. They were not submitting to politics. They were not deciding, well, we just got to vote harder for that guy because he doesn't like the mask. I was like, no, that's not going to do it for me. And so this was just a couple of years ago. And I found some of these local people and they're like, hey, we just want to get together and like garden and like learn skills from each other and, you know, hang out and all this other stuff. And I thought, these are my people, you know. Like I said, there's a lot of overlap. There's just some people that, you know, Freedom Cells is very welcoming, at least in our particular city here, the Twin Cities, I should say, of Minneapolis, St. Paul. And so they'll let you in if you're not a Fed. It's okay. Come on in. You know, everybody can hang out. If you're somebody who is looking for freedom, that's all we care about. We don't care if you're political, whatever, but we ask that you don't bring those things up. And so it's worked out really well for me. And I started a group of my own that meets in St. Paul, and been a little bit on hiatus just because we're still growing. And some people get really busy and freedom isn't a big priority for them. And so I've been able to respect that. And also I sometimes think I was over planning as people just couldn't come to stuff, but it's like, this is my baby and I want it to be other people's baby. So that's where I'm at right now with my local community.
You know what? One of the people in one of our local freedom cells, he said this to me one time when we were talking about this very thing. And he says, you know, people that are actually out here doing shit don't usually have time for meetups. You know what I mean? So it's like, I often have to miss like meetups and stuff for the local freedom cells just because it's like, no, I have shit to do. Like there's just too much to do, you know, like I try to make as many as I can, but sometimes you just can't because you're actually like, I'm sorry, I'm planting that day or whatever the thing, you know, or like,
Well, in my case, it's people that are new to a lot of this stuff and they're working or they're doing things not related to freedom.
Right.
So
sure.
That's
fair.
my frustration is trying to grow that network. I'm considering going over to meetup.com and paying for a membership just to have a place where I can be like, hey, if you're looking for that, here's where we are. Kind of like to just redirect people.
Oh, there you go. Well, I have to skedaddle before too long.
You got like 4 minutes left.
Well, I gotta say, BJ, I love having you on because, especially when I'm tired and my brain's not working, because you just do the whole interview for me. It's awesome.
I'm sorry. I guess I could have waited. No. Did you have one?
No, that I'm being entirely serious. No, it's awesome. It's awesome. Like I didn't have to like pull anything out of you. You like answered all of my questions.
Like, it was like we were interviewing. I know it was like we were asking her questions without actually having to do it.
Right.
Just segue into her own topics. It was awesome.
Right. No, it was fucking awesome.
I mean, I could talk
two closing
for hours because I just love talking to you guys like all the time. But
no, it's always awesome having you on.
I just have not been in the mood to talk to like literally anybody. So
I know how that is. Hey, you did better with dealing with the loss of your mother than I did. I'll tell you that right now. So
well, I'm sorry for yours too. Then
it was a long time ago, but thank you. I did not do well, but I was young, so I didn't know better how to cope with things.
Yeah, I guess I guess you would have been. That's rough, but
I was 18. That was pretty rough.
Me and my mom are really, really close, so you know, relatively speaking. So I would say I think she doesn't want me to be affected by it, but
I didn't even get into I didn't even get into the whole thing about how much more I hate the fucking state because of my death in my family. Let me just tell you, I'll just wrap this up in about 2 sentences. Fuck the state. If you die, like literally just right now, go home and write down the shit that you want your friends and family to have and literally write on the bottom, fuck everybody else. Here's where the money's hidden and don't tell them. And when I die, fucking throw me somewhere. Like that's what I'm going to do. Because if you don't leave a will for your friends and family, it's not like you're a horrible person. It's just she was so sick that she was in denial about her last days on earth. And that's not a crime, you know. But at the same time, it's like it's painful, you know. It's really painful because she really thought that she was leaving money in the bank for us to literally take care of her and not worry about anything else. But you can't just wave a death certificate at the bank and be like, hey, we're going to buy her funeral shit with this. And what the fuck are you talking about? You have no will. You have nobody basically assigned to your mother's estate. You don't even have an estate to speak of. And now come to find out, my poor mother had spent down a majority of her assets shared between my dad and her. And she had to sign power of attorney papers on him when he was still half lucid and in the nursing home, and basically said that, yes, I know what I'm doing. And we think he thought he did. And basically proved to the state that they didn't have that much in between them to pay for his insurance and his medical bills. And for 4 years before he died, the state basically paid all of those. Now, I was misinformed or misinterpreted what medical assistance means. Medical assistance basically means they're footing your whole bill. And when you do that, they can't come after you, the spouse, when you owe that money. You can't even work out payment plans for them. You know what they do? They fuck your kids. So like if your kids think they're taking that money out of the bank account to pay for your last, expenses, And my mom had literally no debt. Like she had an 820 credit score. But she took care of her shit. Even in her last days, the only time she missed a bill was because she was in the hospital for a month. That was it. So we paid for those out of pocket. State comes with a claim to my attorney. Oh, the husband of this person's deceased person has $132 in medical bills, and we're coming to take all of it.
That's so fucked up.
Yeah. And I mean, granted, if my mom even realized that she could have taken care of this, I'm willing to bet she would have probably gave them $500 a month for every month that she lived if she could. But they hide that from you. They hide the fact that you have this bill. They don't tell you any of this shit. And the rule is you go to minnesota.gov, you can actually look up estate recovery or medical claim recovery. It says right on there that the state cannot legally come after the spouse of the deceased person that owes the money. They have to go after the estate. So that's them. And we're still in probate, by the way. It's been since February. And we'll probably still be in probate until October. But thankfully, it's getting a little easier. And I have a really good attorney. And so.
I mean, that's the state for you, just trying to pry dollars from like dead relatives. You know, it's just disgusting.
I mean, granted, it's money owed, but it's not criminal.
Sure,
it's not really fair because nobody knew about it.
I know, and at the worst possible time, you got to deal with that. Like someone's dealing with the loss of a loved one, trying to plan things of that sort and get the affairs in order and all that, and then
yeah. And I mean, my
that.
sister and I didn't even expect anything. Like, we're not sitting over here grieving the loss of a windfall. We were just like, well, we'll just cover whatever she didn't pay when she was in the hospital, and that'd be that, and we'll be fine with it. And come to find out, she had way more than we thought, and you have to stop everything. You can't go to the bank or do anything. You have to start probate. You have to basically say, who's the, and the court, listen, the court has been the best. The state is awful, but the court is great because when you start an estate with probate, you're basically just, you and your family are telling the court what you're going to do. And that's fine because the court can't literally say, oh, nope, you can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. But then when they found this claim, that's when they stepped in and said, okay, we're going to help you do this, but you do have to either recover all assets in order to turn it into money and put it in the estate account so that the state can collect it, or, there's no estate and it's dissolvable. Well, we couldn't prove that it was dissolvable because of the assets. And so anyway, long story short, that is, I came to Liberty with just being fucked over by both parties in my life and seeing how it affected other people in my life and them getting fucked over and just, I guess, finding out the hard way, like how to be better and how to like live without all this crap. And so, yeah. And part of that crap was like all the stuff they fed us in the 70s and 80s and told us it was healthy. And so when I got major diabetes and didn't even know it and had it untreated for several years and had brain fog and all kinds of other problems as a result, it was like, oh, well, this is where I just like decided to take my health into my own hands because medicine wasn't helping. All this other nutrition information, the government wasn't helping. Nobody was helping me. That's when you learn all these people that tell you all your life, oh, we're going to help you. We're going to help you. You pay taxes so we can help you. That's when you really learn how fucked you are. When you're down and out health-wise and you're on 11 prescription medications at the age of 34 and insulin, and then you have to go to Obamacare because they find out you're making too much to keep on Medicaid or whatever it's called. And then that's when you're like, oh, so now if I don't pay for this and I start paying for Obamacare now, because I was on the poor folks insurance, it was like $22 a month, Minnesota Care. And then they're like, oh, well, you make too much money now. And I'm like, I really don't make that much money. Put you on the Obamacare. And then you come to find out they were paying the lion's share of stuff for you before. And now my first month on Obamacare, my first prescription bill was going to be $1,300 out of pocket. And so that's when I started researching do I really need medicine to do? Can I fix this myself? And that's where I kind of came into more of the real whole food and better nutrition and like eliminating all this stuff that I was told. We were told for 30 years oatmeal is healthy. We were told that corn is healthy and that Roundup doesn't really do anything. You know, you can trust the vegetables from the gardens and all this other shit. No. And the seed oils, you know, the 70s and 80s, you look at a magazine or a TV show or anything, all you get, there's like 15 brands of oils. You should put this on your salad. Oh, we made fried chicken with this. It's so, if you look back in hindsight, you're like, God damn, they used to cook fries and tallow and all this other shit. And it's in
Now it's
everything.
industrial lubricant.
It's in every, you could go to Whole Foods, any random aisle of processed packaged food, you're going to find some seed oil on the back of it. Every single, even if you think it's healthy, even if it's from organic, whatever, you look on the back, it's going to have a seed oil in it. And yeah, like you said, industrial, they made that shit in factories because they wanted to use up crop waste. That's it. They just wanted to make profit. There's nothing wrong with tallow, duck fat, lard, butter. It's all the stuff that we eat for millennia before this.
Yeah, and now it's so it's very, very, very common. Obviously, like we're way past this trend becoming common, but it's so like alt, and it's not only like the main kind of, it's really the main kind of alt. I mean, seed oils and obviously cooking with duck fats and stuff, like a lot of animal fats kind of thing, and roasting meat to some extent. But it's the crazy thing is how political that gets, that, you know, it's considered such a, you know, kind of dissident right-wing thing. And then of course, you know, veganism is kind of the, I guess, the alternative on the left. And, you know, I mean, it's kind of sad that food becomes so political just culturally, you know.
Yeah, I've had
not
people on Twitter literally mute me, mutuals, because I would talk about seed oils, and they're like, "Oh, I'm muting that word now, so I won't."
Seed oils and like the meat heavy diet and the fat heavy diet.
I mean, if veganism works for people,
crazy, because it's what you should eat. It's what you should eat. I mean, it's basically, I mean, I'm just saying, like it's what you should eat. I don't know how bad the seed oils are compared to, I mean, yeah, you should basically be eating animal fats, butter, you know, meat in moderation, but certainly a meat heavy diet. I mean, you could just reason that's the case by the foods that were available before agriculture. Again, not to go into the against the grain stuff. I'm just saying that that wasn't available, and and people ate, and people weren't as healthy because they were living a much shittier life. But what are our bodies accustomed to digesting? And what gives us the macros we need? And do we need all these other nutrients that are supposedly delivered in a different proportion, you know?
Right. Well, and for humans, what's weird is that we can literally eat what we're made of. And so if we eat goose, or if we eat cow, or if we eat goat, or if we eat sheep, those animals aren't like us. Some of those are ruminants. They have multi-chambered gastro systems. But like for us, if we eat that, it's literally medicine. It literally patches up our inside. I don't know how to explain it, but we're
eating animal tissue and we're turning it in animal tissue.
We're able to absorb it and grow from it.
But we're also omnivores. So we get to be as flexible as possible, and we don't have the ability to obviously.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why when you're in these communities of people who believe in, you know, putting back to the earth and getting from it, I'm a strong believer of that too. But like you say, it's a flexibility that humans have. So like when we're having a tough time getting meat, and we're having a tough time getting fat or raw milk or cheese or whatever, we've got, you know, you guys have got potatoes and beans and other crops that you can I can't rely on. I mean, if the world was ending in a week, sure, I would eat beans and potatoes because fuck it, you know, but like, I don't know that. So I don't grow those things because they're deadly to me, but I can use other things, you know, and it's like, I know sex got to go, but, and you know,
yeah, I got to scoot.
But obviously,
you guys can keep going if you want, but I gotta scoot right now.
Well, tell the girls that we said hi, and everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, you guys have a great Father's Day weekend.
And thank you for everything, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, BJ. Do you want to plug stuff real quick?
Yeah. So anybody who's interested in, I guess, real food, nutrition, rantings and ravings and things like that, you can go to Ketolicious. It's KETOLISH.US. And I also have beef jerky there that I make homemade. I make it in small batches. It's made to order and it's sent by 2-day mail. If you're interested in that, you can hit me up over there. I'm also on Twitter at KetoBJ, KETOBEEJAY. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's damn good jerky. I eat it all the time. So,
Yeah,
BJ,
BJ,
thanks for coming on. That was a blast. That was a great conversation. I appreciate
come
you
back
telling
on.
your story. And
We
all
need
that.
to have BJ back on for a public episode because she barely got into the stuff she does, the food nutrition stuff, and we definitely want to plug her business anytime. And I'd love to talk to you about other stuff. Just kind of shoot stuff off you. You know, I mean, we're mutuals on Twitter and everything, and there's a
Well,
lot
yeah, I
going
mean,
on in
you
the
and I
world.
could talk about food for hours. And probably Sec can too. But yeah, that's fabulous. I'd appreciate that. And by the way, if you
There's so much info out there. There's so much info out there about nutrition. There's so much discourse and talking. There's so much discourse about nutrition and food, and obviously the seed oils. That's almost like a stereotype. That's almost like the stereotype that kind of covers the whole thing. But there's so much talk about alt nutrition.
It's very becoming very caricaturistic. So like, there's almost cartoon characters that are coming out of this, and a lot of people think it's clown world, but they're probably in denial about a lot of this stuff. A lot of these people think, well, this is what so-and-so said, and therefore this is the authority on the TV. And so I need to trust. A lot of people that have difficulty letting go of authoritative sources, in their mind, authoritative. Of course, we don't believe them. But, and like I said, if you look back at the story that I shared, you can see that I give a lot of credence to a certain authority and believed in a lot of this stuff. I wanted to believe, I thought, I'm paying taxes. There's got to be a reason for that. I really, really did believe that stuff. And of course, now I know so much. It's like sickening. I would have nightmares sometimes. But anyway, I appreciate you guys. And thanks for letting me come on. And by the way, I've got to re-up. I think I got to re-up with you guys for an ad space. I'll probably talk to Resonance about that.
All right, cool. Yeah, thanks again for coming on. This is great. I appreciate you telling your story, and everybody be excellent to each other. And I gotta go. Peace.
All right, take care, everyone. Are we?
Yeah, I think he's done.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and close it out. Thanks for coming on. And I definitely want to have you back on.
It's my pleasure.
We just kind of had Brian Sovereign on after having Brian Sovereign on a few weeks before. And there's always just more to talk about, like with that guy. And same with you, like,
Oh yeah, I could talk.
The panels are cool.
I could talk to you guys about that stuff for hours. I mean, especially, from Brian's perspective, there's a lot there too that's very valuable. But yeah,
he's got topics that on and on. But yeah, look. honestly, I'd love to talk to you about current events. There's just so much going on, and just kind of cutting through. I think we should cut through that's what I was going to say. Like the nutrition space and the food, nutrition, all that stuff.
Yeah, especially the influence of it on social media. That's something that
I'm
very observant.
We're years into this. We're years into this kind of right wing, kind of meat seed oil stuff, and it becomes like the alt news ecosystem. It becomes this is totally an outro, by the way, but this becomes it becomes like the alt news ecosystem where there's so much info and so much different takes on stuff. It's so easy to spread information and engage in discourse online. I mean, I love it. I love the internet, but there's so much info out there. It's an info overload, and it's hard to cut through like what makes sense, what's not. And I'm pretty good at reasoning what makes sense, but I think
what makes the most sense is for someone to try something and see how it works for them. And no matter what side you're on, whether you're more of a vegetarian lifestyle person or more of a low carb kind of keto carnivore style person, there's stuff out there that works for different people. And I don't think you could live on a raw vegan diet, but there are people that have tried to prove it wrong. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't, and I'm not a fence rider. I personally would not tolerate it if one of my closest friends was vegan. I'd be like, I would really try to convince them otherwise, because it can be deadly depending on how fierce you are about it. But if you're moderate about it, if you have fish and eggs and things like that, because that's fine. The people have survived for many years on sort of a vegetarian heavy, but still, allowing themselves to eat eggs and fish and things like that.
I'm functionally ovo-lacto pescatarian, and that's mainly for religious reasons, but I think it's actually healthy.
Seafood.
Those are animal products. Those are animals, just like meat.
Well,
those are animals. So you're getting it. You're getting the nutrients. You're getting you're getting those nutrients.
You're getting stuff from seafood that you wouldn't get from, say, just eating beef, which I do a lot. Eat a lot of beef, and so I try a lot to eat seafood. I think I recently wrote an article about how to prep when you're low carb. A lot of articles out there in our community, especially Liberty Anarcho community, where people talk about prepping and, saving and putting things by to be shelf stable. A lot of those articles take the focus away from anything that could be healthy. A lot of it's, buckets of rice and buckets of oats and all these MREs that are just, not really MREs, but like the military, but like the ones where you spend $150 and it's supposed to last you 20 years. Well, how do you know when you open it, it's not going to be powdered shit, and also how much of that is nutrient? Used to be some of those companies made pretty decent stuff. And I've seen people on YouTube that actually open the stuff from the 80s, cook it and eat it, and they don't die from it. And they say it actually.
Steve and Marie.
Yeah. Well,
and smoking the 30-year-old cigarettes.
Yeah, well, and not just the army guy stuff, but like there's actually homesteaders that like open like Big Mountain or whatever it's called from 1980, whatever, and they eat it and they're like, this actually tastes better than the stuff we bought at the REI last week. And it's because they look at the back and there's no cornstarch, there's no seed oils. It's like beans, brown rice, carrots, dehydrated peas, whatever. It's like all natural ingredients. And then there's maybe a little bit of sugar, but there's no high fructose corn syrup. There's no dextrose. There's no maltodextrin. There's no quote unquote yeast extract, which that's a word. That's an umbrella term. All kinds of bullshit can fall under yeast extract according to the law. One of those things is like modified types of starches. That you can do spraying, freeze dry spraying. And when you freeze dry spray ingredients that are supposed to be preservatives, they throw stuff in there like maltodextrin. Maltodextrin, if you don't know, is a omnipresent poison in our food system right now that is higher on the glucose index, on the glycemic index than sugar. And if you're diabetic, dextrose and maltodextrin will throw you into a super high blood sugar reaction if you have and you don't even know it, because a lot of maltodextrin isn't necessarily sweet, but it's something that gives umami, and it also enhances the savory flavor of things like popcorn seasonings or jerky or gravy packets or ranch dressing seasonings, or just even something as innocuous as like a protein bar from like a reputable company like some of these places like Quest or Cliff, where some of their competitors will have maltodextrin in their foods. And so those are foods people think, well, this is healthy. I'll put it in my backpack. It'll last me a week if I need to eat something in an emergency. And, they think, well, at least it's not a Snickers, and they're patting themselves on the back. They have no idea what the fuck they're eating. They think it's healthy because they're told that. The people want to believe things. They want to believe the money they spent is going to something that's useful.
Well, BJ, I'd come back and just tell us what to eat. No, really help. Let's try to help. Let's try to help clear up this clutter, this overload of information that's out there. And I'd love to just talk about current events with you. I'd really like to just divide, but please, like you've done the research. You know what I mean? Like when you say seed oils, I don't, chuckle or roll my. I don't chuckle or roll my eyes because I know you've been in this for what, like half a decade or more, I guess. And you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff I learned the hard way, and I get sick from it, and that's when I'm like, oh fuck, and so I rail on Twitter about it, and then there's some people that are like better at me at this stuff, and they're like, well, who didn't know that? I roll. And then there's people that are like, what's a seed oil, and how do I know it's better than whatever? And I have to list stuff out, and they're like, oh my god, thank you. And then they go and look on the internet and they say, well, this says something different. And I'm like, well, going back to your statement, Penguin, there's a lot of information out there that is conflicting, and it's really hard to sort through all the bullshit and know what's right. And And so I'd love to pick that conversation back up with you in the future.
Yeah. Well, luckily, I think the alt-right, and I don't know, I probably use that term a lot, it's different than some people, but like the alt-right obsession over like eating raw liver and not eating seed oils is kind of dying down as a meme.
There's some really hyperbolic people out there that are influencers, and they're being really super edgelords about stuff instead of being realistic about things. And
I know people have been doing that for before it became like really well known. So it's a thing, but it's really nice when things aren't a meme and actually are something we can actually discuss, reasonably and not, I don't know, not have the discourse kind of affecting the flow of information.
Well, and there's not a lot of that here in our space. It's more like in the political other spaces. So there's not a lot of this kind of discussion in our spaces where it's more freedom oriented and more you should trust this because, well, no, we don't trust the CDC. No, we don't trust the FDA. There's a lot of people in the normie political space on either side that are like, well, the law says, and we're just like, fuck the law. This is what we should do.
Yeah. I mean, we can't go back and have that level of trust after the food pyramid and
after everything. Yeah.
There's a few big things. It's not, I mean, look, I'm not going to point to like every government intervention has been disastrous, but there's been a few big stinkers.
For sure. There's a lot of
the food pyramid and some of that shit. I mean, yeah.
I mean, some of it's well-intentioned, but most of it's like just because of lobbying. I mean, yeah, if you pad my ass with money, I'm going to give you whatever you want.
We're putting corn in our cars. You don't understand how much ethanol fucks up everything I put gas in. So I'm on motorcycle number 2 now, also carbureted. Everything from my business is carbureted, and they can't even put enough of it into our bodies. They have to put it into our vehicles. Okay, that's another rant.
This is omnipresent shit. Like I can't even buy lotion without seed oil in it, or like candles. Candles have soybean oil in them now. You're burning soybean oil in your house. What the fuck is that about? Like, I literally have to inspect everything in my home and start from scratch.
No, it fucks up but it fucks up your carburetor, which I probably is like, similar to your bodies.
Your car carburetor and literally our endocrine functions are broken because of all the scents and flavors and things that are added to everything we put in our mouths and on our bodies. And so I have to, I'm guilty. My bedroom vanity has perfumes on it that I should throw away.
I don't put a lot of that stuff, honestly. And I'm glad, well, I'm also a guy and I don't do a lot of like lotions and stuff like and creams and stuff, but I got to say like, I'm glad I haven't started. I think I have like cooking olive oil here. Cheap but cooking olive oil that I've been putting in my hair and beard, and like essential oil. And it's not because I'm into like essential oils and everything, but like
worshiping the crystals on the earth.
I'm cheap, and I like this seems sufficient. This seems sufficient.
If it's from the Mediterranean, you're probably fine. But if it's something from an American grocery store, both you and I have to look at these things, because I'm even starting to question some of the stuff that I buy to make I'm making homemade mayonnaise because I'm trying to avoid seed oils. But how do I know that shit's not cut with it? You know what I mean? It's like, I'm really trying my best, but like, how fucked am I getting by trying my best? And so that's another rabbit hole we could go down.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about the olive oil situation. I don't know. I can't keep up with everything I've heard, but anyways, I guess I will close with that. That like,
yeah. Well,
it's not that I'm not even doing all natural, trying to avoid all these like consumer products. Honestly, it's it's easier in some cases. Just put on oil directly on my skin. Put oil on my hair. Get an essential oil, which I know is like maybe pricey, but they're not as pricey as consumer fragrances of higher grades consumer fragrances and stuff.
Well, the other thing is there's people out there that actually craft goods made with tallow too. So you could hit up Resonance. She's got stuff like that. I don't know if it's halal, but like you could ask her. What kind of oils that she has. She may have a coconut product or something like that. If it's not meat derived, that you could use that as a carrier instead of the stuff that you say is cheap olive oil. We don't know the origin. If you really,
it says Turkey, but anyways, I just checked it. It just says Turkey right here. But anyways,
okay.
I just put a little bit in my hair, so I'm not
origin is good. You're probably good.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Thank you.
thanks for coming on, and I hope that's a preview of your next appearance. Please, just get in touch. And great conversation. You're great to have on. Everybody, check out Agora_pod on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. Sex on Twitter. Both of our Telegrams are on there. So please, if you're on Telegram, hit us up. There's also a Discord if you can find your way into that. Just ask us. BJ, you're on Twitter as well. Did you want to
Yeah, again, my handle at
again?
Twitter. My handle at
Again.
Twitter is Keto BJ, KETOBEEJAY.
BEEJAY?
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Well, buy her jerky. She's the jerky person. She has lots of flavors. It's really good. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Until next time.
Thanks. Bye.